Kinsley's story kind of starts like when I got pregnant, and so at the 20-week ultrasound they said, hey, your daughter has a lot of brain malformations and this is what it looks like, and she has a 1 in 10,000 chance of being born alive, and if she is born alive, there's a 1% chance that she'll make it to 6 months. And so we didn't really even expect that we were going to even have a daughter those first few years, and so it was kind of hard to just like, so the whole pregnancy we mostly were planning a funeral and not a birth. And so then she was born and she just came out and she was screaming, full head of hair, the whole gamut, and they took her to the NICU, did all these tests, and they were like, well, she's doing everything that normal babies are doing, so just take her home and see what happens. And so the first few months were just kind of like this honeymoon phase where we were like, we have this baby that is, I mean, it was a miracle, and we weren't expecting to have this baby. And so the first few months were amazing. It was just kind of this like high of highs. And then as she started getting older and missing milestones, then it was kind of the reality of what we were involved with started sinking in. I just remember sitting in that first IEP meeting where we were getting her enrolled for special needs preschool, and they were telling us, your daughter is developmentally delayed in every single area of development. And it was kind of like that moment of like, it just kind of hits you. You're like, okay, this is more than what we thought it was. And so you kind of just take your daughter to these people, they do all their tests on them, and then they say, okay, this is what's wrong with your daughter, and these are the goals we're going to set. But it's hard because sometimes you're on one end of the table and you're like, well, my kid does know those goals. And so it's hard to find the balance between what they see in those tests versus what you see at home, and trying to find a middle ground of how to support your child. So it was kind of coming to terms with that reality and thinking like, okay, now what do we need to do to help her develop intellectually and support her so that she can catch up if possible. Kinsley was in a early intervention preschool program for 2 years when she was 3 and when she was 4. She was the only kid in her class that had physical disabilities. Everyone else was mostly there for just intellectual disabilities, but Kinsley was the only one that had a walker and a wheelchair to help her get around. And I try not to blame the teachers. I feel like they just maybe didn't have the proper training of how to handle her, but all the other kids, I'd go to pick her up and all the other kids are playing on the playground, and I go and Kinsley is sitting on a bench next to one of the aides, and the aides are just hanging out on their phone, and Kinsley's just sitting there watching everyone else play, but she's not getting to play herself. When your kid is being left out from all the other kids, it's heartbreaking. I think any parent just wants their kid to be included and to be loved, and when your kid isn't getting that, when your kid's not getting that, it's hard because it just is a clear division that your kid is different and that they're not welcomed or included in this group. The public education system is amazing for a lot of kids, but it is not a one-size-fits-all system. There are kids that are going to be outliers to the system. It would be amazing if one day we lived in a world where I could bring Kinsley to school, but then I could also take her somewhere else after school where she could get individualized attention to help her with her specific things that she really needs on a daily basis. Maybe that's hippotherapy to help her with walking. Maybe that is getting her a tutor to give her special individualized attention for the things that she's really struggling with. You know, it could look really different for a lot of different families, but if we had a place where families could just easily access those interventions for their kids at any time, that would be an amazing place for all families. So as a special needs parent, I think that it's important to have choices, because when Kinsley was in her first preschool experience, I felt like we didn't have choices. I felt like they were telling us, this is her IEP, this is how it's going to be, and you don't really have much say in how it's going to go. That's how it felt in our first experience, and so after that, that's when we decided to find a new school for her. We actually sold our house and moved so that we could be in a different school. I think being able to have the power to choose what resources are going to best help your children will make it so that parents don't have to sell their houses and move to a different school district to get a better educational program. They'll be able to access what they need from where they are instead of having to do all these crazy things and jump through hoops to get their kids the things that they need. One of the hardest things with special needs parenting is there's always this level of guilt associated with things. You see other kids who maybe come from wealthier families and they're getting all these different therapies, and you're thinking to yourself, well, sure, my kid would be reaching those milestones if I had that kind of money to access those kinds of therapies. And you know, we're all taxpayers, we're all paying into the same system, and what if there was a more efficient way where parents could access funds to be able to get those same therapies that other kids are getting so that their kids can reach those milestones, and it helps level the playing field. I kind of worry that if nothing changes, that it's just going to be a further situation where she just kind of falls further and further behind instead of catching up and progressing and moving forward. If the scholarship is available and Kinsley's been using it for a decade, all of a sudden her future looks so much more bright than it does in the current system. She's been able to access therapies that she's needed for 10 years. She's been able to have individualized tutors come in and help her with the areas that she's been struggling with. And all of a sudden, maybe Kinsley's being more included. Maybe Kinsley doesn't need adaptive equipment that kind of separates her from her peers. I feel like if she's able to continue on this path of getting therapies and interventions that she needs for 10 years, her entire world could be different, and it could be filled with inclusion and greater accessibility for her. And so those are things that we're kind of looking forward to in her future. I'm really excited about this scholarship program because it means that my daughter will have the opportunity to thrive and succeed in her own way that maybe isn't being met by the current system. It doesn't end with Kinsley. We want all parents to be able to access this and to have their children being able to access educational resources that they need. There's a big push for No Child Left Behind, and this scholarship will make it so that no child truly is left behind and every child can get the resources that they deserve.